Hey crew, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun, special scroll saw project video, we're going to be cutting out another design for Easter 2026, and it's going to focus on the true and honest meaning of the Easter season and holiday. Now, we've already done a project focused on the Easter bunny, the Easter egg, the fun and fanciful side of Easter, but today we are focusing on the true meaning of the Easter season, and that is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You know, he was put on the cross, 3 days, he rose again to save us from our sins, and I just want to do a portrait of Jesus today to hopefully translate and hopefully show you guys the true meaning of the holiday. I've already got the pattern photocopied to its full size and attached to our material with clear packing tape. We're going to stack cut and make 2 of them because there's some fragile and delicate details in the design that I'll show you here in a moment, but I want that second layer and added thickness to help support some of those fragile areas during the scrolling process. Of course, we will finish one of the designs in today's video. The pattern in question comes from a very old issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Chapel Publishing, all the way back to spring 2005, issue 18, back when the magazine was just called Scroll Saw Workshop, and you can see the cover of it there. And the design we are going to be doing is on page 28. And here you see the full article here. It says Jesus in prayer. Here you see the pattern we have photocopied. And then you see the portrait of Jesus praying here before he went to the cross for Easter and everything, or in the Bible. But really cool, it says Jesus in prayer. An Italian scroller creates this gentle Jesus in wood by Santo Marco Enzo, and I hope I am pronouncing that name correctly. But here you see the one that they have cut and finished visually for magazine purposes, and you can see that the pattern has a lot of veining in it and a lot of visual lines of detail. So we're going to put the smallest drill bit we have in the Seiko Scroller's drill here to drill out the pilot holes, because some of these visual lines of details are only by themselves, meaning I'll have to drill a pilot hole and just follow that line, stop the scroll saw, and carefully pull the blade back out. But still, it's going to create beautiful and visual lines of details. And you can see here with Christ's fingers where he is praying and everything, those are going to be very delicate to cut out over at the scroll saw, so we will of course take our time and let the blade do the work. Now I'm going to go to a smaller size blade for some of the details on this project. I'll be using a number 2 reverse tooth blade, but for the rest of the cutting I'll be using a number 5 ultra reverse tooth blade, which you guys know, if you are longtime followers and subscribers, is my go-to blade for 99% of the stuff I make over here on YouTube. But a very beautiful design. We're going to use 2 pieces of 3/16 inch construction grade plywood. You guys know I love using plywood because it's a throwback for me to when I was originally learning how to use the scroll saw at around 14, 15, 16 years of age under my grandfather's guidance. So I think that the grain texture on this, once it is stained with a light Minwax wood stain and then clear coated with Rust-Oleum clear gloss, I think that grain texture is going to really help add to the characteristic of the portrait of Jesus in prayer that we are cutting out. And the backer board is going to be another piece of the construction grade plywood that was offcut. And before we ever go to drill the pilot holes, we're going to take this piece over near the wood stove by the door, and we are going to go on and spray paint it black so it can be drying while we are doing the scrolling over at the Rikon scroll saw. Easter is fast approaching, crew. I hope you all are anticipating that beautiful Easter Sunday service at your local church, wherever you attend in the big wide world we live in. And since everything is pretty much prepped and prepared, let's move the camera so we can spray paint the backer board, and then we can move back to the workbench so we can drill out the pilot holes with the Seiko Scroller's drill. And we are going to begin by taking some black Rust-Oleum spray paint and spray painting the backer board and leaving it by the wood stove so it can help accelerate the drying time. And then we will take our scroll saw piece over to the workbench and drill out all of the pilot holes for internal cutting with the Seiko Scroller's drill and a tiny drill bit. And you'll note that I have a backer board behind the scroll saw work to prevent blowout of the pilot holes on the reverse side. Just making sure I get all of them, and then we will head over to the Rikon scroll saw and begin scrolling. Keep in mind I'm stack cutting 2 pieces of the upcycled construction grade plywood, and the blades I am using will cut through the material exceptionally well with minimal chip out. To begin with, I'm using my go-to number 5 Ultra Reverse Tooth scroll saw blade, and again it's cutting through the material exceptionally well, doing some of these initial internal cuts before switching to the smaller blade. I have seen this pattern for years and years, but since we were right here at Easter, I figured it would be a great time to make it and bring it to life visually for you guys over here on the YouTube platform. And once we switch to the close-up view, I will have also switched to the smaller blade size. Again, now we are using a number 2 reverse tooth blade, and I'm doing a lot of that delicate veining work. And I'm being as careful as I can be, of course taking my time and letting the blade do the work. Veining always adds a beautiful dimension and added detail to scroll saw woodworking patterns. And you can see how I am doing the veining. I'm just going along that cut line, and I have the magazine open to my right to where I can glance at it to make sure I'm following the cut lines properly. I don't want to mess anything up while I am scrolling here, but just going through here and getting all of those visual lines of details. And in some cases I will back the scroll saw blade back out while it is still running, and in other cases I'll go to the end of the veining line and carefully lift the scroll saw blade off of the cut line, as you can see me doing there. But now I have switched back to a number 5 Ultra Reverse Tooth blade, and we are doing the final internal cut. And then it will be time to release the piece from the waste wood by following the outside perimeter border. If you guys like what you're seeing, I would highly encourage you to subscribe to the channel and also follow me across all the social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. But this portrait just speaks volumes once it is complete with the beautiful detail of Jesus Christ kneeling in prayer. Now we can step over to the workbench when the scroll saw work is done, and we can remove the pattern and we get our first visual of the beautiful design we have cut out. And due to stack cutting, we have 2 of them, but I'll only finish 1 in today's video. And we'll go over to sanding with 180 grit clean spore woodworking shop sandpaper and the vibrating palm sander, and I'll use small circular motions, being as careful as I can be to sand the delicate details that we have cut out. But now it'll be time for staining, and I'll use my little blower tool to blow out all of that caked in sawdust in the veining lines. And I'll stain everything with a very light shade of Minwax wood stain that still allows the natural grain textures of the material to shine through. And we'll wipe off the excess and set it aside to dry. And when both pieces were dry to the touch, we'll take medium grade CA glue and activator to glue the scroll saw work to the backer board. And I'll use spring clamps and strips of wood. The strips of wood will help add pressure to those center details to make sure they grab the backer board. And after around 5 minutes after the glue has dried and cured, I'll come back and remove the clamps and the strips of wood, and we'll be ready to head back over to the scroll saw for the final time, and we will do the flush trim to get the final dimensions, still using that number 5 Ultra Reverse Tooth blade. And once this is complete, all of the scroll saw work will be done, and I'll step over to the belt sander and we'll do some flush sanding all the way around, getting everything nice and smooth. And when I am happy with this, we will go over to staining for the final time, and I will stain the borders and the back side. This helps blend everything together to make it look like one uniform piece. Then I will again wipe off the excess, and when it is dry, we'll apply a finish. And I'll use the little blower tool to blow off any remaining sawdust and give it a few coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss for a finish. And when it dries, the portrait was complete. And here we have the completed Jesus Christ in Prayer portrait, cut out completely over on the Rikon scroll saw from start to finish, and it finished up beautifully with some very delicate and very fragile details in it. Here at a close-up view, you can see some of those intricate details that make up the portrait of Christ praying. You have all of the details in his hands and fingernails here that we done with the number 2 reverse tooth blade, and then a lot of the other cutting we done with the standard number 5 ultra reverse tooth blade. That's why I always encourage people to hopefully have a selection of scroll saw blades out in their garage or workshops when they are doing scroll saw art. Sometimes you need to go to that thinner and finer blade for some of those delicate details, as you can see here. I want to once again thank Mr. Santo Marco Enzo, and again I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, for the beautiful portrait here that we have made for the Easter season. Of course, Jesus in Prayer is an iconic image in the Christian world and in faiths everywhere. No matter what faith you believe in, prayer is an essential part of it, and I think Christ praying speaks volume. I know my grandmother, we've got it now in the family kitchen, but she had a portrait of a man giving thanks, you know, praying with his daily bread, and it's an older man. He's got his glasses off, he's got bread and the Bible there, you know, giving thanks for his daily bread. But prayer is an essential part of your faith and your walk with your faith and everything, and having people to pray for you is also an essential part of your faith. The church we are currently going to is so welcoming. They'll pray for you. They've prayed for me in the past. If you are going through something and need prayer, they are always happy to take you aside and pray for you. But really, really beautiful here. It took me around an hour to scroll everything out here. Of course, with the delicate and fragile details here, you need to, of course, take your time and let the blade do the work and be as loyal as you can be to the cut line. And I hope the results here speak for themselves. And I'm giving Christ all the glory for the talent I have over at the scroll saw. Without the talent he has blessed me with, I could not make and bring the videos to the YouTube platform for you guys to hopefully teach and educate you guys about scroll saw woodworking and the other videos I document over here on the YouTube platform. But you can see the delicate details here in his hair, in his beard, and in his hands especially. I keep wanting to call attention to that because they are so delicate. And again, I bounced between the two blades. And again, if you guys see me using this tool, all of that delicate veining work, after you do the sanding, and you got to be very careful with this project when sanding it, sawdust can get caked in those lines. Now, you could, of course, if you have an air compressor, charge it up. But these little pocket blowers you can pick up, again, I got this one off of Amazon. You can easily get all that caked in sawdust out without having to pull out an air compressor and waiting for it to charge up. Now again, as I said at the beginning of the video, we did some stack cutting because I wanted all of that fragile and delicate detail to be supported as much as possible while over at the scroll saw. Here is the second one, so you can see how one looks fresh off of the scroll saw and then how one looks when it is fully finished. The way I finished this one in today's video for you guys to see, after we got done cutting everything and we sanded it with some nice Clinksport Woodworking Shop sandpaper, we stained it with a very light Minwax wood stain, and before we ever went to the scroll saw, we spray painted the backer board with a Rust-Oleum black spray paint so it could be drying while we were doing the scroll saw work. And then once the two pieces were completely dry to the touch, or mostly dry to the touch, we glued them together with medium grade CA glue and activator, and then we went back to the scroll saw and done the final outside perimeter trim flush cut, and then I took it over to the belt sander to give everything a nice flush sanding. And the way I do that, I think it kind of simulates that this is one piece of wood as opposed to two pieces that are cut out and glued together, if that makes any sense. And again, I used basic construction grade plywood, and I want to show the second one here. This one hasn't even been sanded, but you can see here how fragile this piece is once it comes off of the scroll saw. So you of course need to be very careful when you sand it, using very small circular motions over at your sanding station. That's why I also use a vibrating palm sander as opposed to the orbital one. That spinning motion could be too aggressive and it could catch some of the details in Jesus's hair here and grab it and rip it away, and then you would have to try to fix it, or your work over at the scroll saw could be wasted, and I wouldn't want that to happen to anyone who's took the time to make this beautiful and spiritual piece. Of course, I am interpreting this. This could be interpreted as a Christmas, a seasonal pattern, of course, but I'm seeing it as an Easter pattern because, of course, Jesus was in prayer before he went to the cross for Easter. So please be aware of the sacrifice that he made for everyone here on earth in the world we live in. Again, I'm not a perfect person. I fail daily, and I am on my walk with faith just like a lot of my family and friends are on their walks with faith, and we navigate life each and every day that we are blessed with. But really, really cool here. I feel like if you did not want to do all of the veining work here, again, it's a very excuse me, it's a very delicate process to do over at the scroll saw, and again, taking your time and letting the blade do the work is essential. But if you had like a wood burner, let's say, with a fine point on it, you could of course do pyrography and burn all of those visual lines of detail in it. If you had acrylic craft paints, you could go in here and paint all the details on if you wanted to. And I also feel like if you wanted to cut this out of thicker material, again, these two pieces here are around 3/16 inch in thickness. If you wanted to cut it out of thicker material, keep in mind that would be a slower and slower cut over at the scroll saw, but you could potentially put epoxy resins in here and make this kind of like a stained glass. So always options and versatility for patterns and designs. And I hope it goes without saying that you could also enlarge the pattern to make it larger and a lot easier to cut out over at the scroll saw. What I did was photocopied the pattern to 100% out here in the workshop, and there you see the full-size pattern we photocopied. So from lines on a piece of paper to the finished design. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And again, it is Jesus in Prayer, and there you see the article that accompanies the pattern in this older issue of Scroll Saw Workshop magazine. It's now Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine, but this is one of the early issues, spring 2005, issue 18, and there is the cover with those beautiful intricate scroll saw puzzles on it. Those would really be cool to make if you wanted to make those. And if you do not have that magazine, you can also find the same exact pattern, as you can see it here, in the 300 Christian and Inspirational Patterns for Scroll Saw Woodworking. This is the second edition, revised and expanded by Fox Chapel Publishing. They kindly sent me this, and I've used a lot of these designs, especially to do live demos for Scroll Saw Woodworking. And then if you do not want to bother with a book or physical form of the pattern, you can get the archival CDs that Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts and Fox Chapel Publishing offers. This one here has issues 13 through 24 on there. So of course it has this magazine loaded on here in PDF format. So I hope I've given you all enough information if you want to go and seek out this beautiful spiritual pattern for yourself. But Easter is drawing ever closer, my friends. Keep in mind, the final Easter video will go up on Easter Sunday morning as opposed to the traditional Monday morning. So just be aware of that as we wrap up Easter projects over here on the channel. But I hope along the way, from the beginning of the video until now as we are closing it, that you picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit for scroll saw woodworking. As always, I'm trying to teach you all how versatile that tool is out in a garage or workshop. But I'm very happy with how this project finished up. It can now have a hanger attached to the back. And what I usually do is end up giving away the Easter Sunday projects I make to people in my life who I know have a strong faith in their religion and everything. I've give the He Has Risen portrait we done was a Steve Good design. I give the Easter at the door with his arms wide open in victory. I give that to a staff member at Klingsport Woodworking Shop. That was a Steve Good design, and I'll probably give this one away as well. But I hope, again, along the video's journey today, from the intro until now, you guys enjoyed it and watching me bring that beautiful spiritual design to life for Easter 2026. That's going to be about all for this one. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one, and remember, crew, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, and I'll see you all real soon. Happy Easter season, everyone.